Okay, calm down. Right, let's move on. Next. Name the largest two Muslim populated countries in the world. Indonesia and India. Indonesia and China. Malaysia and China, or China and India. We know one of them for sure. It is Indonesia and India. So 58 people got that right. Well done. Let's go and see the rankings now. Let's get started Elijah up a bit higher with the proper names. D. Why is D shy? It's like Mo and Mohammed. So we like our D. Okay? Right, he's winning, or she's winning. Then Musa. Right, let's see. Ahmed's coming, make a comeback. Let's go. Okay, next question. Next question. Bismillah. Which days are the white days of the month, which the Prophet ﷺ recommended us? Is it the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every Hijri month? 12th, 13th, 14th of every Hijri month? 11th, 12th, 13th, or 10th, 9th, or 8th? MashaAllah, majority got the answers right, alhamdulillah. Now let's see who's leading in the scoreboard. D, are you a brother or a sister?
That D back there. What's your name?
There's no assistance.
What's your name?
What's your name, D? Yeah. Okay, well done, D. And we need some sisters, inshallah, to come back on the scoreboard. Next question. How many times is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned in the Quran? 10, 14, 4, or 8? How many times is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned in the Quran? Quickly. Okay. Subhanallah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Most people got it wrong. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was mentioned 4 times. You need to read the Quran, that means. Okay, who's leading? We've got Ilyas, we've got Mustafa, and we've got one sister. Alhamdulillah, takbir for Sayyida. Let's give her some courage, inshallah. Maybe she can come back, inshallah, and lead. Next question. So next question. Question 13. What is the currency of Brazil? Pesos, real, dollar, or Congo? Congo just means what? Right? En español? Chiquito? MashaAllah, let's get the answers in. We've got families here making together. The right answer is pesos. That is the wrong answer, but it was answered. The right answer is real, by the way. However, whoever said peso, the person who did this quiz got it wrong, we'll give you the answer. We'll give you the mark anyway. The answer is real. Okay, Sakina is on the scoreboard, and D is still leading, mashallah, even though he got the wrong answer. Okay, but he's still leading, alhamdulillah. Okay, second last question. We need to really focus now, inshallah, to catch up. Which language was the official language of England for around 300 years in modern history? English, French, Arabic, or Hindi? Which language was spoken officially for 300 years? French is the correct answer. The official language. Okay, Musa is leading now. Ilyas is second, Dean, Ahmed, and Sister Shireen, mashallah. Okay, last question, Brother Tariq. Bismillah, everyone ready? The Al-Aqsa Masjid, the third holiest masjid, is located in which Palestinian city? Is it Gaza, Jerusalem, Nablus, or Hebron? What's the answer? We've got a whole family back together here, mashallah. Really keen to it. And the answer was, of course, Jerusalem. 69 of you got it right, and 17 of you got it wrong. Let's go and see the final scores. Let's go to the next page. The nice person is leaderboard. In third place, Ahmed. Well, pay back the bid. In second place is D, and in first place is Musa. It's Musa! Takbir! Wow. Where is Musa? Musa, mashallah. I like so consistent. I like the tactics you put there, mashallah. Mashallah, well done to everybody. Big, mashallah, congratulations. And Musa, come and tell us, what is Musa again? So we mentioned the gift, and also we'll get, inshallah, 250 grams of cedar honey by My Honey, and a nice Palestinian t-shirt or jumper. You can choose whichever one you want, inshallah. We have different sizes, different designs. Please do visit the store after for those who want to purchase one, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair for participating in the quiz, and I'll hand it over to Brother Khalid.
I just noticed in the back a lot of the volunteers are bringing chairs in for the attendees who are joining us. So please accommodate for them. And those tight squeeze, but mashallah, we'll all make it together. Next up, inshallah, I'd like to invite our guests. Okay, so I've just been told because there's no speakers in this back area of the room, what the organisers have very kindly done is they're utilising the speakers at the back of the room, which are really good quality, you can hear very clearly, and there's also a TV screen there. So for anyone else coming forward now, there's no space, you go to the back of the room, you still see us hopefully, but there's also a TV screen and very good audio back there, inshallah. So next up, I would like to invite, inshallah, someone very special to me and to the community, mashallah, and that is Dr. Uthman Latif. Dr. Uthman is a senior researcher and instructor at St. Peter's Institute. He has a BA in History and an MA in Crusader Studies, and has completed a PhD in the place of Da'in al-Quds and the religious poetry in Muslim effort to recapture Jerusalem and the Crusades. Many of you probably know, mashallah, he has a new book out called Shadows of Strangers. Please get your hands on this. It's an encapsulated tale based on real events in which a family of Muslims are pushed to the limits to survive. Is that accurate, Chef? Okay. So I'd like to invite Dr. Uthman to the stage, inshallah, for his presentation.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم ذكر ذلك بسم الله محمد وعلى محمد كلمة It's wonderful to be with all of you here today, inshallah. I want to begin by saying that we've actually been here before. The Muslims lost Beit Maqdis, Jerusalem, in the year 299 when the first Crusaders came. And it was also a bloodbath in that time as well. In fact, in the accounts of Ibn al-Jawzi, like around 80,000 Muslims were killed in the first crusade. In the account of Ibn al-Aqam, the German chronicle, the heads of babies were smashed against walls. So you had a complete massacre of Muslims. But I want to ask you, like, what was the response of the Muslims in losing Beit Maqdis, in losing Masjid al-Aqsa, in the killing of men, women and children in Beit Maqdis? How would the Muslims respond to that? The first responders, in fact, were not the military classes. They were poets and scholars and people like lay people were the first responders. And this therefore gives a very big incentive as Muslims that all of us can play a very crucial role in what's happening inside now in Gaza. A crucial role in responding. The first poets like Al-Wardi, al-Khayriya, and other anonymous ones began to write their verses in poetry, exposing the Crusaders for their aggression, for the victimizing of the Palestinians. The first responder also scholars like As-Sulami wrote his text called Kitab al-Jihad. And As-Sulami began to warn the Muslim world that your problem is not just the fact that you have an enemy coming all the way from Clermont in France and capturing your land in Beit Maqdis. Your problem is that you're a divided people. And because of your division, you're weak. Your divisiveness and division makes you weak people. And the way to restore yourself and your dignity is to unify your ranks. As Sulami says that the problem does not begin with Jerusalem. It began with Spain and Sicily, and then Jerusalem, and then more after that. So the first responders were not, in fact, military classes. They were poets and scholars. But it would take around 45 years for the Muslims to respond militarily to crusaders. It was Imam bin Zayn who began to reconquer territory. And he, in fact, reconquered a very important state of Edessa Crusader state. And when that happened, it made the Muslims realize that it's potential for us. It's a chance for us to retake Jerusalem. So new poets came, like Ibn Qais, Ibn Munir, Al-Tarabulsi, and Imam al-Din al-Isfahani. New poets came, and they all focused their attention on recapturing Jerusalem. Nuruddin came, 1170s. In fact, before that time, he came, Nuruddin Zengi, and he gave the Muslims 3 points to think about, a 3-point plan. I want all of us to take this seriously. The first realization that Nuruddin had was that if you're divided as a people, you're enemies of each other, because you're always infighting. And Nuruddin remembered the days of the 10th century, when Muslims in Alexandria are fighting Muslims in Bilad al-Sham. And on small theological disputes are making like a war against each other. And because of this, your hearts are always enemies, like your enemies are making war. What room, what space do you have to fight against crusaders? And Nuruddin realized, therefore, that the Sham is divided. So you have Aleppo and you have Damascus. And Damascus is allying the crusaders against Aleppo. Al-Andalus, Spain, by the way, same thing happened. So all these major states of Cordoba and Seville and Granada and Toledo became enemies. Muluk al-Tawaif, the party kingdoms. So that global unity was lost because everyone is a power base in themselves. This happened before, when Muslims lost to the Fatimid Shia, when they came and they took the Maghreb and they took Baghdad and they took Egypt, because provincial rulers became too powerful. Everyone loves their kursi, their seat, and power base. When this happened, no one wants to give power to anybody else. It led to division. If I become egotistical, you become egotistical. We're just concerned about our own authority. There's Allah telling us in the Quran that people who were great lost it before us. Sulaiman alayhi salam was on, Allah says that Sulaiman once saw on his throne like something. He saw just a body. Some ulama, they say that he saw himself as an old person. Some of us, they say he saw shaitan on his throne. The whole point is that the throne I'm sitting on will not be set on me forever. You won't sit on your seat forever. And to realize that there's temporality, the fact that we're just passing along, and the seat is not always mine. The Muslims of Al-Andalus, they lost this, and they lost the whole of Spain, all of Al-Andalus. At the end, they came to Granada. And you might, if you see the Hummer Valleys, you saw a lot of Allah all over the walls of Al-Hummer. Why? Because there's nothing else to say. They lost everything. Everything's for Allah, we've lost everything. The Crusaders, when they took Jerusalem, it was a reminder it's happening all over again. So as Sulaiman was warning them, the same situation happened before us, it's happening all over again. You've got to fix your own ranks. So Nuruddin says the first thing is unify a Sham. If a Sham is divided and Aleppo and Damascus are enemies, there's no way you're going to expel the Crusade from Jerusalem. So the point of one is, my brothers, unify the ranks. Salah ad-Din had the same principle. Nuruddin died in 1974, Salah ad-Din took power in Egypt after him. And you realize I'm going to maintain the unity. You know, for 12 years, 1174, 1186, Salah ad-Din is just in Muslim territories. He's in Damascus, Aleppo, Mosul, the whole of Syria, Mesopotamia, all of Iraq, Yemen, Palestine is trying to unify the ranks. So 1170, he retakes Eilat, the port of Eilat. 1171, look at the years, 1171, defeats the Ottomans in Egypt. 1172, defeats the people of Barca in Tripoli. 1173, defeats the rebels of Sudan. To maintain, to make the Muslims realize that unless you unify your ranks, you are a divided people. And when you're divided, you're weak. The Prophet says that the Jama'ah, unity is rahmah, mercy, and division is adab, is a punishment. So when you're divided in your homes, in your streets, in your masajid, in your families, society, nation, all people are enemies of each other, you're going to be in a weakened state. Weakened state. And then the enemies of Allah will take advantage of you because they know that you're just concerned about yourself. Nur ad-Din, Salah ad-Din made the Muslims realize that the way out of this is to unify the ranks of the people. That's one. Number two, the enemy within. Nur ad-Din, he realized that there's an enemy always allying with the disbelievers against you. We have lots of traitors today in our world today. We have countries of our world today that ally with the enemies of Allah against the Muslims. The point is not thinking about your friends. Nur ad-Din realized it's happening in his time, and there was a need to defeat them to make sure the unity is always secure. And number three, use the tools around you. In Nur ad-Din's time, it was madaris. You know, they built madrasas all over the Sham, and like President Lebanon today, Baalbek, Hama, Homs, Damal, all the internal states, they're building madrasas. You know, Ma'ahid. Why? To teach the Muslims the importance of using the space of those madaris to re-teach the importance of Beit al-Maqdis. Like, this is a wonderful quiz. It's a wonderful thing, subhanAllah. I was so happy to have this. Because in those days, it was rebuilding the madrasas and re-teaching the Muslims from texts that have been of the past, al-Rabai, al-Wasiti, new texts al-Sam'ani, al-Ruhaili, al-Rumaili, Ibn Asakir, the new texts were being proposed promoting the virtues of Beit al-Maqdis. So Muslims, like young people, like children, who grow up learning, this is a place that is important for us to settle in and to fight for. So we have to do a lot in teaching our children why those places are important. Why is Al-Aqsa so important? Which prophets lived in Al-Aqsa? You know, which prophets were around Beit al-Maqdis? Which prophets in the Quran that we read about? So many of them. Zakaria alayhi salam, and Yunus, even Yunus alayhi salam, he went 1 year, he was passing to Beit al-Maqdis. Isa alayhi salam, Maryam alayhi salam, Zakaria, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Sulaiman, Dawood, all prophets of Allah are in that land. And Allah will specify the land for great things to happen in the future. So Salah ad-Din therefore realized the importance was to rebuild the inner strength of the Muslim body. Be strong in yourself and be confident. You know, talk about confidence. Have a vision for success. Nur ad-Din is an amazing thing. He built a minbar. Nowadays, if you build a minbar, it's not a big thing. But in those days, building a minbar, and by the way, the minbar was all built with interlocking parts. So no nails, no nuts, no bolts, nothing. All interlocking. It was a spectacular achievement. You know, like artisans all over the world, they came and they built this minbar. And Nur ad-Din said, we will pray the first salah in Al-Aqsa on this minbar. But until now, we'll station in Aleppo. When we conquer Jerusalem, we'll bring it down. But he died 13 years before Al-Quds was taken, he died in 74. But the minbar was still there. Salah ad-Din then brought the minbar down. And then the first and the second, he made the first khutbah in Al-Aqsa. The point is, give the people a sense of hope. give your children sense of like understanding that one day Al-Quds will be ours. We will be there. Our imams will be leading Salah there. The land, Salahuddin, when we took Al-Quds, they spilled all the rose water on the land and treated the Muslims and non-Muslims with dignity, respect. You know, and gave them rights and gave them privileges and allowed them back in and all these beautiful elements of promoting the importance of Sharia for them. So in our time, therefore, realize whatever we're undergoing today has happened once before, in different fashion, but it's happened before. And there was a strategy, a plan that Nuruddin Salahuddin had in retaking that territory. One, based upon unifying the ranks of the Muslims to prevent divisiveness and division, because that's your weakness inherently. Number two, realize his enemy within, and don't take them as your friends and motivators because they're always aligned with disbelievers. And number three, to realize that Al-Quds, Al-Aqsa, is always important for the Muslims. And therefore learn the lesson, learn the tradition, learn the hadith that we find in books of Fada'il al-Quds, that they're teaching the people. Use it if you're like involved in a school, if you're a teacher, mentor, if you're involved in a masjid, and use the space to teach the books of Fada'il, of teaching the importance of al-Quds. That's exactly what they did at that time. They used the schools and madaris to reteach the children the importance of Bayt al-Maqdis. As parents, we have to do the same thing. So use whatever skill set you have today to do the same thing to make a difference for tomorrow. I wrote this book called Shadows. I'm saying that because it's a lot of parents I was promoting the book the other day. I wrote this fiction book called Shadows of Strangers. It's fiction. It's like it's a good book, inshallah. And it's historical fiction based upon the plight of the Muslims in a special position, and the way that one Muslim family survives by relying on secrets and secret codes and fake walls and things like that to overcome the difficulty in a special community. I think a lot of our kids are in fact exposed to negative things involving magic and things and other things in books. We should of course promote learning that's useful for them so our kids grow up with a very strong Islamic identity. I want to thank all of you for your time, inshallah. May Allah aid you and aid the work of us and give us honor and success in this. Once again, Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khairan.
Which one? I'm in video, inshallah. I'll update you things.
Okay, brothers and sisters, inshallah, we will move on with the next segment. But just before I do, I know the sound is slightly challenging in the middle, but if I could just ask all the vendors to encourage the attendees at the stalls just to keep the voices down. So all stall holders in the back, inshallah, if I could just encourage you to ask the attendees to keep their voices down, and all the attendees in the middle area, kindly join us for the presentations, or make your way right to the back where the sound is a lot louder and disruptive. So inshallah, I'm going to introduce a nice little bonus session to us now. So Brother Owen, would you like to come and introduce the young brother? Because you know more than me, and this is a little new development, mashallah. So another little surprise for our audience today.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, we work with the youth. We have a special young person who's new to the country. He's a guest and he comes from Palestine, mashallah, tabarakallah. So I would like to ask him to introduce himself to us. He's our guest, so please show him some love and support. عودة ما شاء الله. من أي مدينة في فلسطين؟ نابلس. ما شاء الله تبارك الله. كم شهر أو سنة أنت في بريطانيا الآن؟ 4 سنين. ما شاء الله تبارك الله. تعرف تقرأ قرآن؟ ما شاء الله. طيب اقرأ من أي سورة تقرأ؟ سورة ناس. ما شاء الله تبارك الله. So, كم عمرك؟ No, she's 12 years old. He comes from Nablus. Does anyone know where Nablus is? Which part of Palestine is Nablus in? Is it in Gaza? Is it in the occupied territories? Or is it in West Bank? Yes. The West Bank, yes. Alhamdulillah. Okay, inshallah is going to recite some Quran to us.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
تكبير تكبير تكبير. ما شاء الله جزاك الله خير. well done. ما شاء الله تبارك الله. أبو طارق, can you introduce the next speaker inshallah?
Okay, brothers and sisters, I would like to now call up our next speaker, inshallah, esteemed speaker. Ustad Omar Hussein has spoken widely on the issue of Palestine as well as other political and social issues for over 20 years, inshallah. He's featured on several podcasts in the past year and has spoken widely at many universities, including King's College in Cambridge. He's originally Palestinian and visits the region regularly. May Allah preserve him. In his professional life, he's a senior NHS manager, having worked in NHS for over 20 years. So I'd now like to call Ustad Omar Hussein, who has a presentation for us. So if I could ask everyone to be as gracious as to lend in your hearts, your ears, and your attention, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Brothers and sisters, before I get started with my presentation, I want you to all engage with me on a few questions. And you'll see why it's relevant when I go through this. Can I ask you, in the last 16 months, how many of you have used your social media accounts to like and share news about Gaza? Can you put your hands up? And can you keep your hands up if you've also created posts or videos on one of the social media platforms, original content? How many of you have, I would say, felt more connected to the Quran in the last 16 months because of what's happened in Gaza? So Gaza, brothers and sisters, from all your responses, has had a profound impact on us. And what I want to do today is go through a series of narratives, because sometimes we talk about recapturing the narrative, but actually it's a battle at a time in a much, much bigger war. You would have seen these headlines all across the mainstream media 16 months ago. The 40 beheaded babies lie, and the countless lies and the countless emotional kind of whipping up of fear and anger that was created by the mainstream media. Inhuman, massacre, and then we found out the true story in the weeks and the months that followed. We found out what really happened when they used the Hannibal Directive, killing most of their own civilians, and all the lies that were exposed by the amateur, the regular journalists like me and you who counted this narrative. We saw them talking about Hind Rajab, who was murdered by 300 bullets by the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli occupation forces. But look at how the corporate media reported her death. Found dead, 300 bullets. Dehumanizing the people of Gaza, dehumanizing the Palestinians. And many of us, scholars, average people across the world, made sure that this narrative would not be allowed to continue. We exposed one narrative after another. We beat them when it came to the media lies, and we moved forward. Now, this won't play the sound, but anyone who was following the news events in the first month of Gaza would have remembered when Keir Starmer said it was acceptable to besiege the people of Gaza, to starve them, to cut off electricity. This guy was supposed to be a human rights lawyer, and he said it was acceptable to starve the people of Gaza. And we saw this man justify war crimes, and now the Prime Minister of the UK. Sir Keir Starmer, as he was nicknamed, exposed. Like Rishi Sunak, who went to Tel Aviv to meet with Netanyahu. And at that time, by the way, they had already killed over 3,000 civilians. They already killed over 3,000 civilians, and he sat with Netanyahu and he said, "We want you to win." So we exposed the Western complicity in genocide, and we continued to move on. And we saw how they constantly tried to put fear into the hearts of Muslims. Look at what you guys are standing with. You people protesting on the streets of London. This is hate marches. These are supporters of terrorism. But in reality, we had already started capturing the narrative. And just to give you an example, from the 7th of October to the 29th of January 2024, there were 170,000 pro-Palestinian posts on TikTok versus just 8,800 pro-Israeli posts. When you think about what the mainstream media were doing, we were the ones, me, you, and everyone across the world, we had to counter that juggernaut, and we did. Because it didn't all start on the 7th of October. We exposed yet another lie, and we kept moving on. And then we saw the UN, the international community, expose itself, vetoing ceasefire resolutions, one after another. Their hands dripping with blood as they continue to fund and support and give cover to the first live stream genocide in history. There have been many genocides in history, let's not get that wrong. There are genocides happening right now in other parts of the world. But this was the first completely live stream genocide that was being justified. And we exposed them again. And we moved on as we exposed the world order, human rights, women's rights. All these fallacies came tumbling down. And then, unfortunately, the enemy from within. Brothers and sisters, please look at those two dates. They're both on the 4th of November. On one, Erdogan urges unity in the Islamic world amid the Israeli massacres. But on the same day, Turkish protesters exposed that Erdogan had allowed ships destined for Israel to flow freely within the Turkish waters. That is the reality of what we were facing. Hypocrisy. And we move forward and we expose the treachery of the rulers. And we continue to move forward. And you won't be able to hear the audio here, but this is a demonstration from Morocco, calling out the normalization of the regime with the Zionist entity. The same normalization that happened in Egypt and in Jordan and in Turkey. This is an example of what we saw throughout the Muslim world. We saw it in Jordan, we saw it in Egypt, we saw it in Turkey. Muslims saying enough is enough. So we exposed this as well. The normalization equals betrayal. And we move forward. And this is a beautiful video that came out recently, where the brother starts by saying, I'm a Palestinian born to Egyptian parents. I'm a Palestinian born to Egyptian parents' wife because I adopted this cause. This cause is my cause because this is an Islamic cause.
أنا هعلم ولادي إيه لما هي عليهم سورة النساء. أقول لهم إيه؟ سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي إيه بابا هو يريد المسجد الأقصى.
And in fact, it's a cause for humanity. That we saw so many people, our work colleagues, our neighbours, coming up with us and demonstrating against this genocide. It's an Islamic issue, not a Palestinian issue. We expose that lie as well. For some of you old enough to remember these news anchors, in the 1991 Gulf War, the narrative that was being pushed was solely via the mainstream media, the corporate media, the establishment media. These were the three main news anchors in the US during the first Gulf War in 1991. They had complete control over the narrative. Three middle-aged white men from the US controlled the narrative of what the US public would hear. But now, look at the new press, look at the new trendsetters, look at the new people who set the narrative. Many of you people will know their names. Many of you people will know this sweet girl, Lama, who carried the news from Gaza with a big Instagram account and many influencers, and all the others, where Dahdur, who lost so many of his family to the Israeli crimes. And we know that they paid a heavy price in Gaza. But they gave us the live news reports on the ground that allowed us to amplify their call. And how many of them paid with their lives as shuhada? So over 200 journalists were killed in Gaza. To put it into perspective, in every single conflict, including World War II, there have not been as many deaths. Gaza is a population of 2 million people. 200 journalists have been murdered there by the Israeli occupation forces. In the whole of World War II, which encompassed most of the world and lasted for 6 years, there were not 200 journalists murdered. Just put that into perspective. They had to cut these people's reports from coming to us on our phones on a daily basis. And what happened was social media. The big defining factor in us retaking the narrative was social media. Every like, every share, every post, every video, we were able to recapture that narrative. But then, brothers and sisters, we move on to another battle. And a battle that I'm worried that many of us have misunderstood. The relief of the ceasefire in Gaza should not be misunderstood. The ceasefire is for the people of Gaza alone. No one else should consider that we're in a ceasefire. A ceasefire means nothing. We need to really be mindful of this point. And I'm going to cover a few points about this. I want to play a video. I don't know if we can put the audio up for this.
What we want, of course, is not a ceasefire. A ceasefire is nothing, because a ceasefire, it means that the fire will start again. No, we want the end of the Zionist project and a new Palestine where Jews, Christians, and Muslims can live like they did in Al-Andalus, like they lived in Palestine, like they lived in the Ottoman Empire, like they lived in South Africa, like they lived under the Mughals, like they lived in most of North Africa and the Middle East, without genocide, without anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, without pogroms, without Holocaust. They lived together. And I think that's what we want. And I think that's what we will get. So I think the stakes are very high here. This is not just for Palestine that we're fighting, but we're fighting for a new Middle East, the end of Islamophobia as a policy and as an action by the West, the end of apartheid in Palestine.
Many of you may have seen this video. It actually came out quite early on in the genocide. This is Professor Haim Rashad Zabna. He's Jewish by background, and he was talking about how we need to set our sights beyond just the ceasefire, because the fire will start again. We have very short memories as human beings, possibly because we need to cope with trauma. Because what we've seen in the last 16 months led to, I think, a real, it was a very challenging period for us. How many of us cried day and night seeing the images coming out of Gaza? I know Muazzam Beg said he'd seen Afghanistan, he'd seen Syria, but Gaza hit different. Seeing it on your phones for 16 months, non-stop, feels different. And what he was reminding us is that this has happened before. They've attacked Gaza in 2014, they've attacked in 2019. In 2021, when the people of Gaza tried to march and demonstrate at the border, 200 people were killed by snipers. 30 of them were children. So we're not talking about something that's just going to go away. Gaza has been completely annihilated. Look, since the ceasefire, over 100 people have been killed in Gaza. Do we know that? Since the announced ceasefire, already 100 people have been killed. This would be considered an atrocity anywhere else in the world. How many people deserve justice in Gaza? How many orphans? How many children have been killed? How many families that have been wiped off the register? Look at that, 6,500 amputees. And ultimately, what was this all about? Because it all started with the name of Al-Aqsa. And we seem to have now retreated back to, well, at least we have a ceasefire. And I want to go one step further, because Al-Quds is there. But look at the Muslims across the world. I gave a talk with some brothers from East Pakistan, from Kashmir, from Sudan. And they were saying, why is our plight not being discussed in the same way? Why is the plight of the Muslims of Kashmir not getting the attention it deserves? Because beyond the Quds, there is East Pakistan, and there's Kashmir, and there is Sudan. And this ummah is one ummah. وَأَعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold tight to the rope of Allah together and do not be divided. And on that, brothers and sisters, I say to you, keep your energy up, because look how many battles we have won. We need to continue in that journey, inshallah.
Takbir! MashaAllah, Zakla Khair Ustad Ahmad Hussein, a very insightful and powerful reminder into the fight of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Zakla Khair. We'd like to move on, inshallah. We have a very important speaker up next, inshallah. Someone very dear to me, good brother, mashallah, beloved Bhameri, Sheikh Hussein Kempston, who was born and raised in London, UK. He accepted Islam in 1994. Then 3 years later, he went to study at Medina University. He went on to study at the Islamic University of Medina for 7 years, during which he completed his diploma in Arabic language, followed by a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sharia, Masters of Arts in Islamic Law. He was awarded the prestigious British Imams and Scholars Contribution and Achievement Awards in 2015 for outstanding contribution to Dawah. Also an avid Chelsea supporter. Is that still the case? Yeah, unfortunately, I think, inshallah. But let's bring up Sheikh Hussein. May Allah bless you, Sheikh. And again, brothers and sisters, if I can ask you at the back, please do keep your voice down, and we'll continue the program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So you gave me 15 minutes. I think that's not part of 15 minutes. You don't need to know all this information. Anyway, it was my honor and pleasure to be here with you. I became Muslim I became Muslim about 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. And one of the main topics that was even discussed, of course, at that time was the Palestinian issue. It wasn't something I understood very much. But I used to read and look at a number of videos by Ahmed Dida. And he had a few books on this Palestinian conflict. And of course, throughout the years, I was able to understand the reality and the importance of Palestine and its specific reference to Al-Aqsa. Now, as Muslims, I think individually we are able to look at our own state from time to time, whether our iman is up, whether our iman is down. due to the sins, your behavior, how practicing you are. So you're in touch with your iman. So your actions, your da'ah, your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your direct relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as an ummah, how are we to recognize and how are we to know our state as an ummah? We're talking about a fifth of the population of the whole world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I think that the state of what happens in Palestine is a reflection of the health of the ummah. Where we see ourselves in how close we are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there are different obligations we all have, individually, praying our 5 daily prayers, and also as an ummah, what are we fulfilling with regards to those responsibilities? Now this matter, which has been going on of course before, probably 99% of us, we were born. It's been going on for a long time. And it is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees. Now I'm sure that most of the information that has been given to you prior to me coming up here now, and the hard work that has been put in by brothers and sisters to highlight what is happening over the past 15 months, and before that as well. But I wanted to focus on something which we must never ever fall into. That throughout Islamic history, there have been times when the enemies of Islam seemed to appear to have the upper hand, and that the Muslims became very, very weak. And as a Muslim, as a believer in Allah Jalla wa Ala, and the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you must never weaken and you must never lose faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give victory to His ummah. No matter what happens. And that your understanding of what victory actually is should not be seen as that there is, historically there's on the battlefield, the Muslims are the enemies of Islam, the Muslims are victorious, and that is the only victory that we should be looking at. Because that is not the case. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, He is the one who sent the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bi-deen al-haq, with the true religion, so that this religion would be supreme over all other religions. Even if the disbelievers, they don't like it. This is the victory of Islam, that it will be superior to all other ways of life. And it is our responsibility to ensure that prevails. I'm not talking about one point in time where the Muslims were on the battlefield or against an enemy, whether they won the battle or lost the battle. That can happen. If you look at the Prophet ﷺ in his life, you compare Badr and you compare Uhud. Two very different outcomes. The Battle of Badr was a clear victory for the Muslims on that battlefield, with a small amount of number, 315, 314, 313. A year later, at the Battle of Uhud, there is what? There is istishhad or the martyrdom of more than 70 of the Sahaba. It was a shock to the system of the Muslims. Was this outright defeat? No, of course it was not. Islam remained. Islam remained. And alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed during the life of Rasulullah ﷺ to prevail. And that is the true victory. So all of these, if you like, things that we see in the prior months in Gaza, do not see it as a defeat. Because Islam and the Muslims are never defeated. Allah Jalla wa Ala will never allow that. And we should never allow the shaitan to place anything in our hearts, anything which may affect our iman, that we feel weak. Because the nasr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qareeb. it is always close. And it is us as believers that we have Iman in that. And that those who preceded us, who meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as martyrs, they give the glad tidings. They give the glad tidings of those who have not joined them. They were victorious. And those who are waiting for the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are also victorious. If you look at, or were able to meet the people of Gaza, or any people for that matter, who are facing such barrage or pressure, they do not want you to sit there and cry, or to feel weak. But if you see the videos of them returning to their homes, or whatever is remaining in Gaza, you will see that there are so many of them and display izzah, they display honor. They display honor in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to them, what remains for them. Because victory is not in this worldly life, what you can accumulate in this worldly life. This is not the victory. The victory is that you remain close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The victory is that you hold on to the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the true victory. And regardless of what the enemy tries to do to you, that you never lose faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you cannot imagine the rage and the anger that boils in the hearts of the disbelievers, that they are unable to shake the faith of the believers. Mutu bighayrikum. Die in your rage. The person who is unable to shake the believer sends him crazy. Even though he may or she may send the most technologically advanced weapons that you can find. Everything is thrown at them. And they stand there. And they stand there and they hold on to their faith. Those who are martyred, they are happy for them. And those who remain, they hold on to their faith. This is something that they cannot and are unable to tolerate. For this reason, the victory of Islam is in you holding on to your religion. Not becoming emotional beings, reacting in a way which, if you ask what you did last week, that you can't remember, that's not the reaction we want. This is not the reaction that Allah Jalla wa Ala wants from you. And when Khabbab ibn al-Arat radiallahu anhu, when he came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in Mecca, while the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is sitting next to the Kaaba, make dua for us that Allah will help us. They had been suffering. Ammar, Yasir, Sumayya radiallahu anhu, killed in a manner that you can't imagine. Of course, you know how Sumayya radiallahu anha, how she was martyred. Khabbab radiallahu anhu, from the first of the companions to embrace Islam. He comes to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the Meccan period. Ya Rasulullah, open lana. Make dua for us. And so the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he makes clear to Khabbab that there were people who came before you, who were martyred and killed for their faith in a way that is far worse than that you are facing. That they would be burned, there would be cones of iron taking their skin off, and that would not shake them in their faith. And that the Prophet ﷺ says that by Allah, that this Amr or Islam will be complete and be victorious. And a time will come that a person will have security to go from Sana'a to Hadramaut and not fear anything. But you are a hasty people. If you think when this was said, in the early time in the Meccan period, what was to come? Maybe another 5, 6, 7, 8 years of persecution in Mecca. And then the Hijrah. And then 8 years. 8 years in the Madani period, Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Khaybar, all of these battles yet to take place. The martyrdom of so many companions yet to happen. The loss of life yet to happen. Here the Prophet ﷺ said to his companion that you need to be patient, that you need to be hasty. You are a hasty people and you need to be patient. And then in the 8th year, when Allah decreed that the Muslims, they would return. They would return in Aam al-Fath, in the year of victory, the conquest of Makkah, where the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was once again re-established in Makkah. It was purified. But those oppressors who had the keys to the Kaaba, the keys were taken from them and given to those who were deserving of being custodians of the Kaaba. And walillahi alhamd, we are able to go to Makkah and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Allah wishes. Masjid al-Aqsa bi'idhnillahi ta'ala is also sacred for us. It is a place that Allah ta'ala mentions in the Quran. And it's upon every single Muslim to ensure that you go there if you can, to keep this place in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever happens around it, and the places around it are places of barakah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed these areas, all that is around it. And those who live there are a chosen people to protect this place, to uphold the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I weren't chosen to be there, they were. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is our obligation to make sure that we are always able to go to Masjid al-Aqsa regardless of what happens around it, regardless of what happens in our lives or our children's lives, to bring about and educate our family members about the importance of this place, and never ever to give up. Even if you see you're surrounded by what seems to be pure destruction, and that there's no way out. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that when the disbelievers said, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ, the people gathered against you, so you should fear them. We do not fear them. But we say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for us, and He is the best of the one to take care of our affairs. But the qadr of Allah, the plan of Allah, is the best of plans. You and I don't plan these things out. It's the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Individually, you are tested, and as a community, we are also tested. And events like this go a long way, inshallah ta'ala, to remove something which we may be questioned about on the Day of Judgment. That what did you do? Did you educate yourself about these situations? Were you able to do something about that after that education came to you? So this is just one small step in maybe removing something that we may be, no doubt, accountable for. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless every single one of you. May Allah Jalla wa Ala allow the victory to be apparent and continue in our lives for the people of Gaza, for the people of Palestine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be part of that positive change. Allahumma ameen. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair to Sheikh Steve Kempson. Inshallah. Takbir! Okay, brothers and sisters, we have a very special video that we'd like to play you now from Humiliated Advocacy. So if I can kindly ask everyone at the stores to kindly make your way over, have a seat, inshallah. And if it's possible, yes, perfect timing. But for the lights to go off, okay? I'll be starting at the bottom, inshallah. And other things. Okay, inshallah, if I could ask you all to give us your hearts and minds and to pay full attention to the video, inshallah, after which I'll come back on. Just bear with us for 1 minute, inshallah, we'll get it fixed.
That's it, خلاص. My laptop will work better. It's coming through the computer. Send it to me and I'll play it. If you want to do it on WhatsApp, I'll do WhatsApp. What's your number? 07944 899 868. No problem. Forget it. Tariq's doing it, let him do it. Khalas, enough. Forget it. Forget it. Yeah, people are most of the chairs a lot of people have left it. That's fine. Khalas, give him the mic. Give him the mic. Give him the mic.
Yeah, it's not very quick. It's a large one.
You good to go?
Yeah.
You can do it.
Free enough.
Listen up. Yeah. Definitely work.
This past year, we witnessed the tragedy in Gaza and the devastating impact on our brothers and sisters. Yet, we also saw undeniable resilience, the power of compassion and the strength of unity. Entire neighborhoods have been reduced to rubble. Food trucks were stopped at borders, with aid being severely reduced and impacted. Water supplies cut off, leaving families without even a drop of clean water. Medical supplies were blocked, forcing doctors to make impossible choices in overcrowded hospitals with the targeting of doctors and aid workers. Despite Despite all these challenges, your support has enabled us to deliver aid directly to those who need it most. Together, we provide food packs to nourish hungry families, hygiene kits to protect health and dignity, clean water through tankers, mobile medical clinics and medical kits to treat the sick and injured, babies for the youngest and most vulnerable, temporary shelters to provide safety and comfort. Our programs also include orphan sponsorships to give children hope for a brighter future, and cash assistance to help families rebuild their lives. These small acts of kindness bring light to even the darkest days. But we don't stop at aid. We amplify voices and raise awareness globally through our advocacy work. Our No to Genocide billboards demand justice, while initiatives like Muslim Students for Palestine inspire a new generation of change makers. Our mobile adverts ensure the world doesn't forget Gaza's plight. This is where you come in. As we look to clear the rubble and begin rebuilding projects, we need your support to uplift and serve our brothers and sisters. Together, we serve our Ummah with dignity.
If I get the lights on, please. Thank you, Jazakallah khair. Brothers and sisters, just before I start, if I could ask the lights to go on, and if everybody who may have left to walk back during the technical issue can kindly join us back in the seating area. Bismillah. Brothers and sisters, you know these little technical issues that we just had? Really, it's a reminder. Yeah, it's a reminder for us that the types of challenges that we have every single day, like a laptop won't play audio, or we have to run out in the cold to the central heating in our car, or the fact that we couldn't find the right shoes to wear tonight, or the microwave's not working. All these challenges that we have on a daily basis are nothing, they're insignificant in comparison to the trials and tribulations of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Now all the tabloids and broadsheets are talking about